Shocking courtroom scene, black woman stuns everyone by taking judge's seat after police attack. Sarah Johnson stood outside the courthouse, her heart pounding like a drum, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. The sun had barely risen over Maplewood, Indiana, but the air was electric with tension. A crowd of familiar faces gathered, holding signs emblazoned with justice for Jamal and Black Lives Matter. This was it. Today would be a turning point, whether for her brother or for the town they loved. Jamal's face was a mixture of fear and resilience, framed by the bruises that marred his skin. Their family's legacy was rooted deep in Maplewood, where generations had endured struggles but thrived, always returning to the diner after each hardship, to share laughter and dreams. But today, those dreams felt threatened, as the courtroom doors loomed ahead like an unyielding wall. As Sarah stepped onto the worn wooden floor, every eye turned to her. She could feel the pulse of her heart in her throat, the energy of those who loved her brother washing over her. The courtroom, with its stark walls and flickering fluorescent lights, seemed to close in around her. She feared it would swallow her whole, just like it seemed to swallow so many others who had come before, their stories lost in whispers of injustice. When the defense attorney belittled Jamal's character, the indignation roared inside Sarah. Her hands balled into fists. Each word felt like a dagger aimed not just at him, but at every person who had ever faced unfair judgment. The murmurs of disbelief and anger swept through the room like a storm, vibrating against her very core. Tears flooded her eyes as she caught Jamal's anxious glance, his hope fading under the weight of systemic neglect. She had to do something, then came the moment that would shift everything. Just as the judge prepared to dismiss the case, Sarah's emotions exploded from her, raw and resolute. She stood up, defiance igniting within her. Without a second thought, she strode to the front of the courtroom and, with dizzying determination, took the judge's seat. The gasps echoed, a collective intake of breath that seemed to freeze time. Enough! She shouted, trembling yet firm. This is not just about Jamal. This is about all of us. We deserve a chance to be seen, to be heard. Her voice reverberated off the bare walls, shaking even the most steadfast hearts. Light spilled into the room, illuminating the anxious faces of community members who had shared stories of their own struggles facing down prejudice, poverty, and the everyday fight for respect. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The courtroom erupted into a wave of murmurs, the tension palpable. Each person wrestled with their own fibers of courage, some moved to their feet, emboldened by Sarah's stand. She felt the swell of their energy, pushing her higher. But risks hung heavy in the air, tensions could unravel into chaos at any moment. As she sat in that seat, staring into the faces of the people she loved, she didn't feel fear. Instead, she felt a sense of purpose. Would her bravery spark a change? Could it bridge the divides that had haunted Maplewood? The questions loomed large, echoing in the depths of her mind. Looking out into the sea of determined faces, she silently vowed to stand for her brother and for justice no matter the cost. In that moment, the future of her family and community balanced on the edge of uncertainty, ready to unravel. A charged pause settled over the courtroom, the air thick with anticipation. Sarah felt the collective breath of the crowd as they realized they were witnesses to something greater than just a trial. It was a standoff between fear and courage, between injustice and the promise of change. Each second stretched into eternity, and her heart raced, feeling a pulse that echoed the collective hope of Maplewood. The judge, taken aback, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Ms. Johnson, this is highly irregular." His voice trailed off, but he didn't dismiss her. Instead, there was a flicker of respect in his eyes, a glimmer of acknowledgement for her bravery. "Who are we if we do not fight for one another?" Sarah glanced at Jamal, his eyes wide and filled with a mix of fear and pride. She hoped he understood. This was her stand, but it was for him, for every face in the crowd, for those who felt silenced. "Ms. Johnson." A voice called from the back, the local newspaper reporter, Jenny, her pen poised over her notepad. "What are you hoping to achieve by sitting in that seat?" "Justice," Sarah shouted, weaving through fear and passion that swirled within her. "I want to see a world where my brother, my friends, and our community aren't viewed through a lens of prejudice. I'm here to ensure our voices rise over the noise of injustice." The crowd roared, some clapping and others shouting affirmations. And within that wave of sound, the dominoes began to fall. One by one, people stood. Elderly faces, young couples, friends, and children all united behind her. The sentiment fluttered around the room, gripping the judge's attention with each rising pulse. "Order in the court," the judge finally exclaimed, but the authority in his voice trembled against the force of their collective will. Sarah held her breath, realizing the risks they faced. Could this trailblaze a way for change, or would it crumble under the weight of the system meant to control? As the crowd's energy vibrated around her, the defense attorney intervened, surrounding the air with sarcasm. "And what do you suggest, Ms. Johnson? That we throw the rules out the window?" "Yes," she cried, looking him directly in the eye. "The rules that protect privilege over people, that are built on fear instead of understanding. We need to rewrite the narrative. We can't keep living under laws that deny our dignity." Her words lit a fire. The crowd erupted again, chanting Sarah's name, "Sarah! Sarah! Sarah!" In that moment, the lines drawn between courtroom and community blurred. She glanced at Jamal, who now mirrored her fire, determination sparking a light in his eyes, but just as the momentum built, a deputy moved forward, unsure but intent on restoring order. "You need to step down, Ms. Johnson. This is not a place for protests." "Then let this be the moment we change that. Let us make this a place for justice," she responded, her voice steady. The deputy hesitated, glancing around at the crowd. Sarah's heart pounded. Would he follow through with the threats that loomed over her? Would they really see this through? Just then, a local pastor, known for his deep ties to the community, stepped forward. "This is a moment that demands we not back down. The world has had enough of silence." His voice thundered, and it resonated deep within Sarah's soul. As hands clasped beside her, Sarah knew there was no turning back. Her silence had been shattered, and shadows of the past began to unravel. They could no longer stand idly by while injustice ruled their community. With every ounce of conviction, she prepared for what might come next. Closing her eyes for just a heartbeat, she took a breath and opened them to meet the eyes of her brother. In that electric moment of possibilities, a part of her felt that this wasn't just about Jamal anymore, it was about a shared awakening. But at the edge of that rise, a voice echoed from the back, shattering the unity. "What will you do if they take her away?" A chilling question that tipped uncertainty into the air, weaving doubt into hope. Sarah swallowed hard, facing the challenge. "Then we fight harder." As the weight of her declaration hung heavy in the air, a new realization dawned on her. The next steps wouldn't just require courage, they would demand sacrifice. And the true fight was just beginning. Would they stand together when it truly mattered? Determined looks swarmed her eyesight, but looming threats began to take shape. She could sense the courtroom shifting, and with it, the stakes rising higher than ever. What decision would each person make in this moment? And as she prepared for their response, she thought, deep down, what would she risk to unite them all? The courthouse buzzed with a charged energy, emotions running wild as Sarah's defiance reverberated in the hearts of the people. Each face in the crowd showed a mix of determination and fear, reflecting their shared struggle. Jamal's eyes locked onto hers, filled with a fierce pride that fueled her resolve. "Fight harder" became their anthem, a call that wove through the air like a thread binding them together. But beneath the surface, uncertainty danced with anticipation. Would they rally behind her? Or would fear hold them back? The deputy stepped closer, hand resting on his belt. The hardened expression on his face felt like a silent threat. Sarah's heart raced. She anticipated resistance, but the chilling urgency in that moment was undeniable. "Ms. Johnson," he said, his tone sharp, "this is an unlawful assembly. You need to leave the stand." The crowd gasped in unison, a collective intake of breath, the kind that echoed through the hall like a riptide. Sarah took a deep breath, channeling the strength from Jamal's look. "No. We are not leaving until our voices are heard." A murmur spread, swelling into a chorus of affirmation. "We want justice." An older woman shouted, her voice cracking but powerful. Others joined in, raising their voices as if they were feathers caught in a storm. Caught in the eye of this emotional hurricane, Sarah felt buoyed by their energy. She raised her hands, refusing to back down. "We are here to change the narrative. Together, we rewrite our future." But the deputy wasn't finished. He advanced, a handcuff glinting ominously in the studio lights. "I don't want to have to enforce the law, but I will if you don't step down." The room crackled. It was a moment weighed heavily with what-ifs and could-bes. In that instant, Sarah could hear her heartbeat pounding, a synchrony with the crowd that felt electric. Behind her, people were rising, one by one. An elderly man stood firm, shaking but resolute. "I've seen the fight for justice in my lifetime. This is ours too." His voice, though worn, commanded respect. The younger folk around him nudged forward, fists raised in solidarity. Encouraged, Sarah turned back to the courtroom. "This isn't just about my brother. It's about every single soul who has been wronged and cast aside. We have a voice that will be heard." "Yes." They echoed, their voices giving life to her words, a chant that filled the hollow spaces in the court. The gavel clashed against wood, but the sound was drowned out by the thrumming of their unity. Just then, the doors swung open with a creak that pierced the charged air. Sarah's heart dropped. More deputies, flanking the entrance like wolves with purpose. This was the moment of truth. Would they turn away, or would they stand? Sarah steeled herself. "No matter what happens, we face this together." Tension nodded as the crowd fell silent, catching their breath like a team ready for a game-changing play. Suddenly, a voice rang from the back again, the pastor, stronger now. "Can we live in fear forever? Or will we unite in strength?" A wave of emotion swept through the crowd, bringing faces together in a mix of hope and defiance. One by one, hands rose. They were no longer mere spectators, they were a force to be reckoned with. Together. They shouted, sounding an echo of determination that seemed to shake the very walls of the courthouse. Yet the gravity of the threat loomed. Sarah glanced at Jamal again, his face crumpled with uncertainty and a hint of fear. The deputies were advancing. She could feel the tension in her bones, the weight of the moment pressing down. "Will you stand with me when the time comes?" She whispered to herself, a prayer born on the cusp of hope. And just as resolve began to settle, a deep voice came from the back, someone she had never expected to hear. "What would you sacrifice?" In that instant, Sarah realized she was on the brink of something monumental. Would they dig deep enough to fight for their future? Would they be willing to pay the price for change? As the deputies closed the distance, the fabric of their fight was stretched taut. And with the threat of separation hanging in the air, the room erupted not just in words, but in palpable fear and thrilling possibility. What legacy would be written in that courtroom today? Sarah could hardly breathe as the deputy inched closer, tension thick in the air. She felt the pulse of fear coursing through the crowd like an unseen current, but it was quickly overshadowed by something stronger: determination. Every soul present understood that this fight felt bigger than any one individual, bigger than just her brother. "Do you think I care about your laws?" She shouted back, her voice unwavering. People are dying out there. And we will not be silenced. The deputy paused, caught off guard by her defiance. The crowd buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose. People were standing taller, their voices mingling into a fierce, rebellious roar that shook the courtroom foundation. "Stand firm. Stand together," called the old man, his voice ringing through the chaos. "For families torn apart. For lives unjustly taken." A few others joined in, chanting, "For justice. For justice." As if they were casting spells against the oppressive fear that gripped the room. Sarah felt the heat rise within her, revitalized by their passion, but just as the chant grew louder, terror sliced through the air as the deputies advanced, prepared to take control. The gavel echoed down the hall, a futile attempt to regain order. Sarah took a step forward, her legs trembling but her heart steadfast. The crowd mirrored her movement, each step a testament to their unity. "Are we going to let them push us around?" she yelled, desperation mingling with defiance. "Now is the time to show our strength. We have the numbers, let us show them our power." The murmurs grew into a loud chorus, drowning out any attempts to silence them. "Power! Power!" The deputy flinched, uncertainty flickering across his features. They were more than just a gathering, they were a movement ignited by shared pain and relentless hope. Then, without thinking, Sarah stepped down from the stand. Every step felt like a leap of faith. She turned, locking eyes with Jamal, who wore a mixture of admiration and fear. But this wasn't just about him, it was about all the faces in the crowd, the faces that had carried the weight of injustice for too long. "Let us take their seat," she called out, ramping up the adrenaline pulsing through the room. The pastor's voice rose above all, "They cannot silence us if we stand together." With a roar of determination, people began to move. An avalanche of humanity surged forward, people heading towards the judge's seat as if claiming their rightful place in history. The deputies hesitated but stood their ground, arms crossed. One brave woman pushed forward, her chin high. "We are the jury of our own lives. We deserve to be heard." And just like that, a wave of courage washed over them. As Sarah reached the judge's seat, a sudden thought crept into her mind. What came next? What sacrifices lay ahead? She glanced up, taking in the view of the entire courtroom, the faces of the crowd now illuminated by shared strength and fierce determination. And then, just as she was about to speak, one deputy stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Anyone who steps forward will face consequences," he warned, voice steady but betraying a hint of concern. A heavy silence blanketed the room, heartbeats racing in the quiet as everyone waited for her response. Would she back down? Would she call into question everything they had fought for? "What are you willing to lose?" Sarah finally asked, heart pounding. The question hung there, drifting through the air like smoke. With that, she realized their fate was not just in her hands, it was in everyone's hands. Would they risk everything for a chance at righteousness? The stakes had never felt higher. As the moment stretched, an image flashed in her mind, her brother, his smile bright against the injustice that clawed at him. Would they fight for his memory? But before she could answer, a loud crash echoed through the doors once again, shattering the fragile silence. And from the shadows, another figure stepped forward, bringing with them a new threat and a new possibility. What would happen now? The tension in the courtroom skyrocketed as the figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, her features obscured by a hood, but her presence commanded immediate attention. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a chill, stirring a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "Who are you?" shouted one deputy, squaring his shoulders as he stepped forward, ready to confront this new threat. "Someone who understands why you're all gathered here," the woman replied, her voice steady and clear. With a fluid motion, she pulled back her hood, revealing a face etched with both resilience and pain. Her eyes, deep pools of determination, locked onto Sarah Thompson, right? "Your brother, he was my friend," she said, taking cautious steps toward the judge's seat, ignoring the deputy's palpable discomfort. The crowd stirred, sensing the gravity of her words. Before Sarah could respond, another crash echoed, followed by shouts from the deputies outside. Panic bubbled beneath the surface, threatening to boil over as the crowd braced for what might come next. "Stay strong." Sarah heard a man's voice in the back, and the energy shifted. People were backing her, fueled by shared experiences of loss and anger. "Listen," the woman continued, her voice stronger now, almost a rallying cry. "I know what we're fighting for. I know what's at stake. They want to take our voices. But together, we can shake this foundation if you're willing to stand with me." With those words, the subtle murmurings of inspired doubt turned into a wave, pulsating like a heartbeat. Sarah felt the rush of adrenaline, casting aside uncertainty. Could this woman really ignite a force strong enough to challenge the deputies? "What are you asking us to do?" Sarah found her voice again, meeting the woman's gaze, steely and bright. "Demand the truth. Demand justice. You have to believe you're not just individuals in this fight, but a collective force," she urged, stepping closer to Sarah, her words almost a whisper yet resonating like thunder in the spacious room. Relentless courage stirred within Sarah's heart. The faces around her mirrored her resolve, each one holding stories of their past, bearing the marks of long-fought battles. They were not just bystanders anymore, they had become a united front. "Are you ready?" The woman challenged, looking at each person present as if urging them to feel the weight of the moment. As if on cue, the crowd began to chant again, louder this time. "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Their voices wove into something powerful, a living testament to what they sought. The deputies shifted uncomfortably, their hesitance betraying their initial composure. Then the woman stepped toward the vacant judge's seat, her sheer presence demanding attention. "If you want to let them silence you, then you need a voice. Someone to speak for those who can't anymore." As she sat down, bold and unyielding, a spark ignited in the room. Sarah knew this was a bold move, inviting chaos and uncertainty. But that spark burned fiercely. The stillness between the deputies and the crowd grew taut, anticipation hanging thick. "What's your name?" Sarah finally asked, pushing through the tumult of emotions that swirled around them. "Call me Naomi," the woman said, a smile breaking through the gravity of the moment. "Naomi," Sarah echoed, feeling the taste of courage on her tongue. "Let us take this fight to them." Just then, another deputy stepped back, his face taut with unease. "You don't understand the consequences," he warned, desperation lacing his tone. "Perhaps you don't understand ours," Sarah shot back, hearts racing as they watched the power shift, adrenaline pulsing through her veins. What would that shift mean for them all? What sacrifices were they prepared to make in this moment of reckoning? The stakes soared, each heartbeat louder than the last as tensions escalated. Would courage be enough to win the day, or would it bring unimaginable costs? As Naomi prepared to address the court, Sarah felt the weight of his words settle around her, a question echoing in her mind as the room drew breath. How far would they go to seize justice when everything felt on the brink of collapse? Naomi took a deep breath, her hands steadying on the arms of the judge's chair. The buzz of the crowd faded to a low hum as she surveyed the room, the faces of the anxious spectators reflecting a shared determination. Each one was ready to defy, to let their voices ring out. Her presence felt electric, sparking an unspoken agreement among them all. "Today, we write our own narrative," Naomi declared, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "We refuse to be mere spectators of injustice. We've lost too much, but we can arm ourselves with the truth." The crowd erupted, cheers filling the air, but Naomi held her hand up for quiet. The deputies, though visibly shaken, wouldn't leave without a fight. She could see tension knotting their brows. This was their domain, their authority at stake. "Let us start by stating the facts," she said firmly. "Too many lives have been broken under the weight of corruption and lies. We are not here to play by your rules anymore." A figure in the back of the courtroom stood up, his voice rising above the rest. "What about the ones who've been silenced? What about justice for them? Exactly. Naomi pointed toward him, igniting even more fervor. We are here to speak for those who can't. This isn't just about today, it's about our future. Our children deserve a better tomorrow. Sarah felt the warmth of strength flooding through her as Naomi's words sparked empathy. Memories of her brother flooded her mind, the laughter, the dreams they had shared. For him, for everyone who hadn't had a voice, the fight felt more personal. One of the deputies shifted, breaking her concentration. You're making a huge mistake, he warned, his voice strained with desperation. You win against the system. It's bigger than you think. Naomi locked eyes with him, unwavering. You underestimate us. We are the system. They will hear us, whether you want to listen or not. The crowd roared again, each chant swelling their spirits. Justice. Justice. It was louder now, like thunder, shaking the very foundation of the courtroom. It felt as if the walls themselves were vibrating with their collective anger and hope. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Sarah caught sight of something shifting at the back of the room, more figures, lurking just outside, their intentions unreadable. Anxiety twisted in her gut. What if they were here for more than just a display of power? Naomi, Sarah whispered, leaning closer. I think, but it was too late. A loud bang cut through her words, reverberating off the walls like a cannon shot. The doors swung open, deputies flooding in, faces grim, batons drawn, threatening the very essence of what they had built. Get down. One of them screamed as tension escalated into chaos. The chanting stopped abruptly, fear taking root. Heartbeats thundered in Sarah's ears as she grabbed Naomi's arm. We can't back down now, she urged. Naomi's face hardened with resolve. Stand your ground. She shouted over the din. This isn't just our court, it's our right to fight for our voices. But as the deputies advanced, pushing through the crowd, Sarah's gut twisted painfully. What would happen to them? To Naomi? Would they really face a torrent of violence they weren't prepared for? Caught in that agonizing moment, Sarah sensed an undeniable choice lay ahead of them. Fight or flight? Would they hold their ground, or would they face the wrath of the very system that sought to crush them? The hearts of the crowd were pounding in fear and hope, a volatile mix that could ignite either action. And just as the deputies raised their weapons, a voice rang out, cutting through the chaos like a beacon. You can't silence us anymore. Who had spoken? What would come next? The line was drawn and the future teetered on the edge. Sarah's heart raced as a figure surged forward from the crowd, a familiar face that lit a flicker of hope in the chaos. It was Ethan, their old neighbor and community activist, who had fought tirelessly against the injustices that plagued their town. As he took center stage, his presence commanded attention. Listen. He shouted, his voice booming over the crowd and the deputies. This is our moment. We have the strength of our ancestors behind us, the blood of the fallen running in our veins. We cannot be intimidated. We will not be silenced. Every person in the room felt a jolt of energy, an invisible current running between them fueled by shared pain and the desire for change. The deputies faltered for just a beat, unease creeping into their ranks. For a moment, it seemed the tide might turn. Naomi seized the moment, stepping forward beside Ethan. We are not criminals. We are the voice of our community. We are here to demand justice. The deputies exchanged glances, clearly shaken. There was something powerful about the unity on display, something they hadn't anticipated. Each shout, each rallying cry from the crowd felt like a pebble thrown into a pond rippling forward, expanding into a wave of fervor. As they locked eyes with their captors, Sarah could feel the air thicken. The deputies had their orders, but so did the people. In that instant, standing shoulder to shoulder, Sarah felt an unfamiliar strength within herself. Together. Naomi's voice rang out, harmonizing with Ethan's. Together we stand. The crowd erupted once more, a collective roar that pierced through the facade of authority. The moment felt monumental, like the first crack of dawn after a long night. But Sarah noticed something else. One of the deputies had lowered his baton, uncertainty washing over his face as he glanced nervously at his peers. "Look at our kids." Ethan pointed around the room, ensuring their eyes fell on the children pressed against the back wall, faces wide with fear. "You will teach them the lesson of mercy today. Or you will teach them the lesson of resolve." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. For every child watching, they had to be brave. This wasn't just about them, it was about all those who had suffered in silence. Suddenly, the doors behind the deputies slammed shut, locking them in place. A collective gasp swept through the room as a sense of hope illuminated the fear. It was not just a physical barrier, it was a symbolic stand, a declaration of unity that said they would not be pushed around anymore. Yet, Sarah's heart sank a little. Would they really be able to hold their ground? The vibration in the air ticked higher, the stakes lifting with every passing second. Just then, the tension snapped like a tightrope burdened with weight as Naomi took a bold step into the aisle, eyes aglow with fierce determination. "What's it going to be?" she shouted, her challenge echoing off the walls. "Will we fight together, or will we stand down? Will we let fear silence us, or will we choose to rise?" It was a question that hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. As the deputies hesitated, caught between duty and the tide of resistance, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Would they really fight, knowing the consequences could be dire? Then, a rattle at the back of the room drew her gaze. More people were moving into view, faces steeled with determination. Were they allies or more opposition? She felt the ground shift beneath her, and suddenly, the future seemed to dangle on a thread. What would happen when the dust settled? Would they emerge stronger, or fall to the weight of the system they were challenging? The moment of decision loomed and they were ready to see it through. The crowd's energy was palpable, a living thing thrumming with a shared heartbeat. Sarah could feel it rising, swelling, almost vibrating through her body. Anxiety prickled at her skin as she glimpsed movement again at the back of the room. Faces were filtering in, familiar faces, neighbors, friends, some she hadn't seen in years. They had come to rally, drawn by the gravity of that moment, by the cries for justice that echoed through every heart. "Keep coming," Naomi urged, her voice rising above the thrumming tension. "We are stronger together. Look how far we've come." More voices joined in, chanting answers, calling for change, and making the air buzz with defiance. Each shout was a reminder of the strength in numbers, the power in solidarity. And then, like a crow landing on a hot street, everything changed. A heavy-set man pushed his way through the crowd, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sweat glistening on his brow. It was Mr. Jennings, the town school principal, known for his unwavering support of the community causes. His face was set, his jaw clenched with fierce determination. He stepped next to Naomi and Ethan, eyes blazing with unyielding hope. "Sarah," he called, and she peered through the throngs, her heart racing even more. "Get ready. You may need to step in." She forced herself to breathe deeply. What was he suggesting? This wasn't just a protest anymore, it was becoming a movement. It felt electric, and with every pulse of collective will, she knew they could move mountains or, at the very least, that one door. Ethan picked up on the energy shift, nodding to the growing crowd, urging them into a rhythm of unity. "Look at your neighbors. Look at the strength woven right into this community. We can take back our freedom." A wild cheer erupted, and Sarah's heart swelled with fear and hope. But that fear had etched itself deeply into her bones. What if they were arrested? What if they were hurt? Where would that leave them? Where would it leave their children? In that moment, she caught sight of the youngest ones still huddled together, and they were watching with eyes wide open not just to the spectacle around them, but to the truth they were witnessing. Little did they know, they could feel the shift in the world around them, too. Taking a step forward, Sarah hadn't even realized she was moving until it was too late. With each stride, she pushed against the fear, the doubt, and with every breath, she could feel her resolve solidify. "I'm ready," she muttered to herself, standing and firming her stance. Across the room, Ethan's eyes found hers, and for a brief moment, their gazes locked like a promise exchanged in silence. "Now!" boomed a voice from the back, a familiar, enthusiastic call that made the hairs on her arms stand at attention. It was Marcus, the local firefighter, known as much for his bravery as for his rallying cries. "Everyone, raise your voices. Let them hear our hearts." The wave of voices crashed against the deputies again, and a few more of them visibly stiffened, sweat dotting their brows. Sarah noted once more that one had lowered their baton entirely. What if this was it? What if they were on the brink of something bigger than themselves? From behind her, she could now hear her children murmuring, sensing the moment brewing just as she did. An overwhelming urge swelled within her. "What are you waiting for?" she thought, determination surging through her veins like fire. Just as she prepared to step further into the spotlight, ready to stand beside her community and demand justice, she noticed the doors beginning to shake. What a sudden chill washed over her. The sound of more footsteps echoed ominously from outside. Were they reinforcements for the deputies? Would the confrontation escalate, or could this spark the moment they had all been waiting for? The room held its breath, the energy shifting like a tightrope wavering in the wind. What would happen next? Would they stand tall or bend to the pressure? The doors burst open, and a wave of chill swept through the room, silencing the crowd momentarily. In stepped a squad of deputies, stern faces set above matching uniforms, with a tension that radiated from their presence. Muffled gasps fluttered across the audience like startled birds. Sarah felt her heart race anew, pounding like the relentless march of the drums echoing in her ears. "Stay calm," Mr. Jennings shouted, his voice booming yet reassuring, cutting through the air thick with dread. "We're here for justice. Stand united." The crowd shifted, hesitating, eyes darting between their leaders and the newly arrived deputies. Sarah glanced at Ethan and saw his jaw tight, his fists clenched. He was ready, and she could see it. There was only one small step separating their hope from dread. Then, something unexpected happened. A woman at the front of the crowd, a teacher, Sarah recognized, stepped forward. Angela, with her fierce spirit and compassion, stood, framed by the chaos. She raised her voice, carrying a weight that clung to every word. "We are not here to back down." An electrifying force surged through those gathered, each shouting in unison, finding strength in Angela's courage. A couple of children near Sarah gripped each other's hands tightly, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. "What's happening, Mom?" her youngest whispered, sensing the tension. Just watch, honey," Sarah encouraged, though her own heart was pounding like a wild drum. The uncertainty was thick, and she knew that they were at a critical tipping point. The deputies advanced, but Angela pressed on, her unwavering confidence creating a ripple of resolve among the people. "We've had enough. Enough of the lies. Enough of the fear. We're here for the truth." Each word seemed to stoke the flames of their collective spirit. Sarah could feel the warmth of hope igniting in her chest. However, just as Angela stepped closer to the line of deputies, one of them raised a baton half-heartedly, perhaps, but it was enough to cut through the boiling energy of the moment. A collective gasp rose up as the crowd trembled at the sight. In that terrifying second, everything seemed to freeze. Sarah felt a profound shift in the air, a potential for conflict that could unravel all they had constructed together in their fight for justice. Would they take a step back in fear, or advance toward unity and strength? Marcus broke through that tension like a rush of wind. "We are family. You will not silence us." His shout ignited the crowd again, voices roaring as if they could shake the very foundations beneath them. Ethan stepped forward with a determined fire in his eyes, glancing at Sarah. "This is our moment," he said, and the weight of his words held almost a hypnotic quality. She met his gaze, understanding the gravity of it fully, and then, almost instinctively, without a word, Sarah started moving. She found a path toward the front, her feet guiding her before her heart caught up. The growing tide of voices buoyed her with each step. But suddenly, a commotion broke out at the back. Sarah turned instinctively, and her breath hitched in her throat. A clash erupted, deputies jostling with another group behind them, and the atmosphere turned electric with panic. "Sarah!" Mr. Jennings' voice reached her as panic began rippling through the crowd. "We need you up here." It was now or never. With her heart pounding like a fast drum in her chest, Sarah positioned herself among the leaders, drawing strength from the people around her. "Together!" she shouted, her own voice rising above the chaos. "Together, we stand." But outside the walls, more voices were heard. The unmistakable roar of police sirens was drawing closer. What would happen if reinforcements arrived? Would their spirit be enough to hold the line, or was this just the start of a deeper conflict? As she stood in that pivotal moment, sweat beading on her brow, the weight of the unknown settled on her shoulders. The air buzzed with uncertainty as if the entire world held its breath, waiting for the next move. What came next would define them all. Would they succumb to fear or rise in defiance? The tension in the courtyard was at a breaking point, the atmosphere thick with both fear and hope. The deputies, now bolstered by their newfound reinforcements, advanced, their expressions hard and resolute. But this time, Sarah felt the warmth of unity radiate behind her, a wall of strength forged from shared resilience. She took a steadying breath, channeling that energy into her own conviction. "Stay together!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the crowd. There was a ripple of determination, a collective heartbeat that pulsed with her words. Around her, familiar faces transformed into fierce warriors ready to fight for justice. Jamal's proud expression anchored her, reminding her of every moment that had led them to this pivotal encounter. Naomi's expression was fierce as she stepped forward, her stance unyielding. "We are not just fighting for ourselves, we are standing on the shoulders of those who fought before us. We carry their strength into battle." The crowd erupted in affirmation, collective voices merging into a harmonious roar of intention. The chant of "Justice! Justice!" filled the courtyard, an unstoppable wave washing over the room, pushing against the grim determination of the deputies. "Ma'am, you need to clear the area," one of the deputies shouted, pointing threateningly toward Naomi. But the crowd pressed forward, not breaking their unified barrier. It was more than just bodies standing together, it was hearts and hopes woven in an unbreakable tapestry. "They can't intimidate us," a voice cried from the back. A local grandmother, her frail frame enveloped in a shawl, holding a sign that read, "Our voices matter." The sight of her fragile yet unyielding strength ignited adrenaline rushing through Sarah's veins. They were all there for one common purpose. In the midst of the tumult, the jarring sound of sirens blared, a reminder of impending consequences. Fear threatened to unravel their resolve, but Sarah refused to let it seep in. "We will not back down," she yelled, drawing from the depths of her courage. "This is our moment." The deputies hesitated, glancing at one another, uneasy as the tide of passion undulated around them. Facing a united front proved to be a different battle than they had anticipated. Sarah saw some deputies falter, their rigid postures relaxing like they were weighing the cost of their suppression. The sky seemed to thrum as more people joined the gathering, adding to the swell of support. Friends, neighbors, even strangers whose lives had been intertwined by shared struggles were now standing together, shoulder to shoulder. "Together!" Ethan's voice rang out, the infectious fervor catching on. "Together we demand accountability. Together we claim our voices." Each shout pierced through the haze of intimidation, breathing life into their fight. Suddenly, something shifted. One deputy stepped forward, holding his baton down at his side, no longer raised against them. With his expression softening, an unexpected wave of hope washed over Sarah and the crowd. "You all just want to be heard, right?" he asked, voice trembling slightly. "Yes," Sarah shouted, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "We want to be recognized as human beings, deserving of dignity and justice." One by one, other deputies began lowering their weapons too, doubt creeping into their ranks as the chant surged louder. Justice. Justice. Sarah looked around, each face radiating defiance and strength. They had faced a lifetime of suppressive measures, but here, in this moment, they were reclaiming their power. A sense of victory crackled in the air, not yet complete, but palpable, and then Naomi, with her unwavering spirit, took another bold step forward. "We are here to hold everyone accountable, including you. Will you stand with us or against us?" The crowd fell into a focused hush, waiting for the deputy's response, the future hanging in the balance. Silence enveloped him as he surveyed the sea of faces. "I stand with you," he said finally, his voice steadier. "I can't ignore the strength I see before me." A roar of triumph erupted, hearts taking flight with a shared fire of renewed hope. Jamal's eyes sparkled with pride, and Sarah felt tears of joy prick at her eyelids. This was at the pivotal moment where fear fractured and solidarity picked up the shattered pieces. "We are not just a protest," Sarah called, bursting with passion. "We are a movement. A promise to ourselves, a promise to one another." The crowd rallied, their voices intertwining into a powerful wave of conviction. As the atmosphere shifted, the door behind the deputies swung wide open, refreshing light washing over them. More community members emerged, faces reflecting a determination that spread like wildfire. Parents held their children close, elders with seasoned wisdom stood firm, and the younger generation filled with hope pressed forward. "I see you," Sarah cried out, her heart full. "We all see one another." The echoes of shifted hearts reverberated through the court, the front line teeming with unapologetic resilience. And amid the excitement, they all understood that they would continue to fight not just for Jamal, but for generations to come. As the momentum swelled, a powerful unity washed over them. They were no longer just a gathering, they were a community prepared to change the narrative. Liberty, justice, and truth were no longer ideas but living entities that thrived within each of them. "It's time. Together." Sarah roared, the battle cry resounding as they championed their fight for justice. Their collective strength, a force of nature that couldn't be torn apart, could ignite sparks of revolution. The moment of reckoning was here, and they would seize it. Just as dawn breaks through the darkest night, they stood together, ready to blaze a trail toward justice. Now, it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and let your support shine through. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending, and you need to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share.